with a rousing tribute to Sergeant First Class Corey Rimsberg, who the president met when he was able-bodied and then met again after Sergeant First Class Rimsberg's 10th deployment, when he was wounded by a roadside bomb in Afghanistan. The President's speech had an optimistic tone. It was sort of a can-do speech, coming at a time when much of the country is in a doubtful mood, having recently watched the government shutdown and the troubled rollout of the Affordable Care Act's website. The President talked about the need to rebuild the trust of the people who sent us here. Bob Schieffer, he highlighted 6 areas where he said he would act if Congress would not, saying that he would use the power of the pulpit, the bully pulpit, and executive orders to take action if the Republican Congress wouldn't help him.
I think that's the lead, that's the news lead, but I think clearly the highlight of this speech was seeing that young sergeant stand up and what that stood for. I mean, to see his father help him up. I mean, that is what people will take away from this speech. The rest of it, we'll see how it works out.
That ovation lasted more than 2 minutes, certainly the longest ovation we saw tonight, with Sergeant First Class Rimsberg really standing as an archetype for all of the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines.
In a funny way, just kind of a symbol of what the country has gone through in these long wars and the sacrifices these people have made. You know, the president kind of drew the line, and I'll be interested to see what the reaction from this Congress is going to be. He says he's not going to wait for them. He's going to go ahead if they can't do it. Well, the fact is, he can't do many great things. You can, by executive order, do some things. Truman desegregated the armed services with an executive order. But he needs this Congress, and they need him, and they have still got to find a way to work together if they're going to solve the real problems that are facing this country.
Norah O'Donnell, what did you see in the speech?
You know, I agree, and just adding on Sergeant Rimsberg, a reminder that there have been more than 900,000 servicemen and women who were wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan, nearly 1 million. And his wounds are some of the toughest that servicemen and women have experienced. And I think the president ended on that, clearly, because we saw both Republicans and Democrats rise to their feet. And that's the narrative and the arc of the speech of the president, is that we in Washington can't stand in the way of the progress that needs to be made. At the beginning of the speech, the president said, it's you, the citizens of America, that make the state of our union strong. And I think then the rest of his speech really just proved that Obama's proposals have gone from grand to granular. Right? From these grand sweeping proposals at the beginning of a second term to the granular, kind of more modest, scaled back proposals, where really the only thing that he could probably get done, other than the steps he's going to take by executive action this year, is this sliver of hope that there might be some deal on immigration reform. The president, in last year's remarks, said a pathway to citizenship, spent several paragraphs on it. This year, just one paragraph, and he dropped the pathway to citizenship reference, because what he may get from the Republicans in Congress is just legal status, and he may take that.
And in fact, he gave no specifics on immigration reform, and that was probably a strategic move on his part to not give the opposition anything to latch onto and to be against. John Dickerson is our CBS News political director, and I want to bring you in, John, as we continue to watch the president leaving the chamber tonight. The president talked about the numbers of areas where he would act if Congress would not, but it really reminded many people of the limits of presidential power.
Absolutely. It was a very modest list of things that he can do himself. To your point about immigration, they know, and the president's been told by Speaker John Boehner, if you get too involved in immigration, you're going to scare off Republicans who we hope to get together on some kind of immigration bill. But if you look at the areas the president talked about, the big things, immigration, tax reform, student loans, extending unemployment benefits, the minimum wage, All of those things require Congress to work with him. But before the speech, his aides were saying because he's had such difficulty with the Republicans in Congress, he was going to go it alone. But then if you look at the specifics of what he's going to do, he's going to raise the minimum wage for companies that work with the federal government. Well, that's a very small amount. He's going to set up a special thing at the Treasury Department, a savings account. But that's a very small thing. He's going to convene CEOs. He's going to meet with college professors. He's going to cut some red tape and take care of some permitting blockages. That is very small bore stuff compared to the claims the president made tonight and his aides have been making in terms of his acting, constantly, persistently acting when Congress doesn't.
Well, the president would certainly prefer signing legislation to signing autographs. Major Garrett's our chief White House correspondent. Major, you've been analyzing the speech as it begins to snow here in Washington. What did you see?
Well, Scott, what I can tell you is what happened here at the White House before the speech. We are obliged here at the White House, those of us who cover it every day, to try to find out the absolute specifics of some of these executive orders that the president hopes will gather headlines in tomorrow morning's coverage of this speech. The one on minimum wage for federal contract workers and this idea of a My IRA, some kind of specialized savings account for workers. I can tell you in the briefings here at the White House, Scott, the White House had very few specifics, specifically on that savings account. Nothing about whether it would have any preferential tax status, how it would start, what agreements there are with employers, what it is that people who work for these employers would suddenly find in their paychecks to save if they aren't saving already. The White House could answer almost no specific questions about how this would work, what it would require Congress, and what it would actually do to advance the cause of savings. It's not a pension, it's not a tax preferential IRA or 401k account. The White House really had no answers on that or the minimum wage for contract workers.
And there goes the president leaving the House chamber and about to head back to the White House.